So I remember the first time I soldered up a guitar in the closet of my brother's garage with a plumbing torch I bought at Home Depot. But it was the big torch because I thought that would be the best way to do this. It was a big piece of metal, and that was the extent of my metalworking knowledge before I started making resonator guitars. So this is Mule number 1. 27-year-old me in a closet in a garage, not knowing how to cut a piece of metal or weld a piece of metal. This was the first of a long string of failures. And what I learned from making this instrument was failing is the way. Failing is the process. If you don't know what to do, you have to commit to figuring out how to do it. And this instrument means a lot to me. There's no parts on it because I needed to take the parts off so I could afford to make number 2. and I've left it that way because I think it's a really good reminder. It's a tangible reminder of that idea of if you're going to do something, it's going to be difficult. That doesn't mean that you don't do it. It means it's going to be worth it when you get it done. I grew up in Alma, Michigan, which is about an hour from where I live right now in Saginaw. Alma's a small farm community. My dad's a pastor there. There wasn't a lot going on in Alma, so we had to create our own fun and just kind of go exploring. So there wasn't a lot of music. It was BMX bike riding, it was hockey, it was playing in the woods, it was that sort of stuff. I grew up playing the violin. I got my first violin from my neighbor when I was 6, and that was my first exposure to music. 10 years old and playing in a college orchestra in town, I loved it. I loved music. I loved being in an orchestra and playing music with people. But there was this one audition when I was probably 12 or 13 where you walk out on stage in the theater, Professor Scripps, old bearded man is sitting there waiting for you to come out and play. And I absolutely bombed it. I couldn't play anything. It wasn't like, I didn't do as good as I thought. I just got super nervous and then just folded, and he was very comforting, but I walked home with my violin and I told my parents I was never playing again. And I didn't. There was a couple years, where I wasn't playing an instrument, and then I got into high school and I was exposed to a lot more of like the mainstream music and stuff. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna start playing guitar, but I didn't really have any aspirations of being a rock star, of playing music full time. A friend of mine was in a car accident in high school, and I kind of had this random thought to write her a song. And we had taken a bus of like all our classmates to go and see her. And so the classmates are all standing around and she's in a wheelchair and I'm playing this song for her. And that was kind of that moment, I think. And I've never really talked about it before, but I think that was kind of a moment where I realized like music was way more than just what you hear on the radio. It was way more than just playing guitar for attention. This was way bigger than that, and obviously I had no words for it at the time, but kept the guitar around. Eventually, I think that kind of combined with a natural desire to make things. When I was growing up, in Alma, there's nothing to do, but I was always kind of like tinkering with stuff. I was always making little wood carvings, or, maybe I can make a sword out of wood, maybe I can make this out of wood, maybe I can carve whatever. And I think that music experience combined with growing up and just kind of messing with stuff eventually got me interested in making instruments, and I put together a kit electric guitar in my dorm room in high school, and it was absolutely horrible, but that's what got the wheels turning. Was okay, maybe I could do that for a living, and ended up going to a guitar making school in Phoenix, Roberto Van. Learning to make guitars is an interesting combination of learning from other people, and then you just got to do it. I ended up renting out an industrial garage in Minnesota, and I didn't have enough money for an apartment and a shop, and had a couch in there and a heated blanket. It was the middle of December, and I slept next to my bandsaw, and boy, I was really doing it. I was doing it on my terms and making taking a shot at it. I'm still really proud of that time, I was. But I realized after 6 months or so, this wasn't, there was no momentum. It was a kind of a dead end. So I started looking for a job, and I'm honestly not sure how I found Huss and Dalton. I know my first experience learning about them was in Acoustic Guitar magazine, just reading a little clip about it. And so I reached out to them and went down for an interview at Huss and Dalton, and sat down in the lunchroom with Jeff Huss, and he looked at me, and his first question was, "What kind of music do you listen to?" There was a lot of foreshadowing involved with that. Music is the most important thing about making guitars. That is the point. And that's just what they did there. They made these tools for musicians who played songs that were hundreds of years old, that were part of heritage and culture of the area, who were part of a heritage and culture that people were trying to carry into the future. My time at Huss and Dalton was my formative time. That was where I got my hands on a ton of work. That's where the mentors came in and said, "This is wrong. This is getting a little better," and that opportunity to really make stuff, to fail, to succeed, to learn at Huss and Dalton was my priceless time. What I got from making instruments was this direct feedback, this satisfaction of, I've made this thing. I can look at it, I can hold it in my hands, I know what's wrong with it, I know what's right with it. There was a very direct path that kind of lined up in my brain. By the end of Huss and Dalton, I had carved probably around 600 necks. So it was a ton of hands-on experience. After about 3 years, I ended up moving back to Michigan, and there was no forward. I was just kind of floating until I saw Kelly Joe Phelps play his resonator guitar in Traverse City. And when Kelly walked out on stage, you felt like a presence. You felt like he was pulling back the curtain on something that was bigger than all of us, and he was letting you see that. That was the experience of watching him perform. And so when Kelly Joe walked out on stage and didn't say a word and pulled out his resonator guitar, this shiny nickel icon of an instrument, and tuned it up quietly and everyone's listening, and he starts in on this song, it's hard to express, like, seeing an instrument that could stand toe to toe with that spiritual presence. How the wind around this train. It wasn't just loud, it was so expressive. It could go anywhere he took it with just little inflections in his right hand. And I was just captivated by it, and everybody else was. People who didn't know how to play guitar would like yell up on stage, questions about it. They just couldn't help themselves, what's it made out of, what year it is, tell us about it, that whole thing. And when I left, I knew it. I knew it in that moment. I have to figure out how to make these guitars. Weld. I had never cut a piece of metal. I had never seen a resonator guitar in person except for that instrument. Nothing. But I knew I have to figure out how to make one of those. And that was the moment. I'm unemployed, broke. I'm trying to make a business, making something that I've only seen once in person. And at the time I didn't care. I was just so obsessed with it. I was just consumed with the process of, I don't know how to do any of this, and I'm gonna figure it out, because I saw the end result of what it could be. But what I didn't realize was how much would be involved with it. Okay, you expect to fail, but you can't really expect to fail that much. I'd spend all day working on something, and then would get done and then realize I have to throw it in the trash, and that was really difficult. I knew that I wasn't gonna give up, but that didn't mean that I didn't have the voice telling me to. That internal battle was huge, and that happened every time I failed. It happened every time I woke up in the morning and had to do that thing that I did yesterday, which was make a bunch of stuff that didn't work. And that was the struggle. It was that internal thing. I was in this tiny little room by myself looking up YouTube videos on my phone because I couldn't ask anybody. There wasn't kind of a support system to do with that. And that was a huge part of the challenge. The first place that I started out making the resonators was in a closet in my brother's garage, in this very skinny, long closet that was probably the width of a workbench. And so I cut my workbench in half so that I could have a shelf behind me. And so I would work on this tiny little workbench and then swivel around in my chair and pull stuff off the shelf. I was making guitars in that room for probably a year, and then I did the big move and I rented out a house and I moved into a basement room which was about 15 feet by 15 feet. I was in this basement room for probably a year and a half trying to figure out how to do this more. I started a website, and probably a month or so in, I had 12 people on this wait list, and the wait list never went away. My approach to that instrument was to offer musicians something different, a different tool, not a better tool, just a different tool. I ended up hiring my brother and a friend to help make the instruments. We moved into our first real spot, and it was 1,200 square feet in a beautiful building in Saginaw. It's wood floors. There's not one tiny window, there's 3 giant windows. I could see the sun, But it really took probably 2 years of having a wait list before I realized, this could be a thing. You're in survive mode, you're trying to figure out how to do stuff. It's almost like the idea that this could be successful is on the back burner, you're just trying to get through day by day. You're just trying to figure out how to make the solder joint, And so then after 2 years, it was this idea of, oh, this is like a business, like it's happening, you know, whether I intended it to be that way or not. And luckily we've had a wait list ever since. I think if I told my 27-year-old self that would be the case, there'd be no way. You know, like I think we're up to like 2,000 instruments right now, and it's unimaginable then. I've always been a person who, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it really hard. I like intensity. If my focus goes somewhere, I'm going to take it all the way. And it didn't matter if it was violin as a 6-year-old or playing football and getting picked on, or the guitars. I'm going to take an experience as far as I can go to get the most out of it, right? And you know, it's kind of the same with the business with the resonator guitars. There is no end game. There's just the intensity of the experience of it. And I get that with the guitars. I get that with the music that's made on the guitars, but I also get it from other things like fishing and jiu-jitsu. I think what appeals to me about fishing is the authenticity of it. Like you can't fake it. You're in nature and you're playing this game on the fish's terms. It's definitely not the tangled fishing lines. Fishing like the resonator guitars to me is this crazy puzzle. It's like you're putting together this puzzle that you don't know what it actually looks like. And with fishing, to me, it's that. It's not just sitting and like checking out. You're participating in something that's so much bigger than you. You're participating in this historic life cycle of these animals in nature, in these beautiful places, and you're trying to figure out their puzzle. It's windy, you're freezing to death, and you're playing their game, but your brain just kind of flips off. Those like fully immersive experiences, whether you're standing in a cold river or in a crowd at a Marcus King concert, it's the same thing. We're looking for those opportunities or those experiences where we get to be part of something that's bigger than us, where we get to kind of go click. Now you're part of this shared experience, whether it's with nature or other people, that you can't get on your own. The community around the instruments is the most important thing to me. What I learned at Huss and Dalton was music is the most important thing about making instruments. Music is about people. Music is how we emotionally convey human experience with other people who have the same experiences. There's no other way to so effectively become connected with another human being except through music.
It's beautiful, man.
So this engraving's done by Jen.
Oh man,
That's Jen Bauer up in Traverse City.
check that out, dude.
And
Good thing it's me.
seeing how the community of Mule has been connected through the music that's played on them, that's my favorite thing. When I'm in those moments where it's these people coming together, this wouldn't have happened if that song wasn't written on that guitar. For me, those are those moments where the brain turns off. It's priceless. It blows my mind, but I'm so thankful for it because in a lot of regards, like, I'm still 27, inside. Like, I'm still just in survive mode, hoping that this works, and it blows my mind that when I go to NAMM show that there's some 20-year-old kid who walks up to the booth and is like, I can't believe I get to hold one. I've been following you since I was 10. What? I don't know if grateful is a powerful enough word for that. I don't know how to describe it. Because we're here in this moment because of all of those steps that I've taken since that neighbor gave me that violin. And I'm so thankful for that singular connection that couldn't have happened any other way. I think Mule is where I want it to be. What I'm doing now is what I wanted to be doing. I've got a great group of guys. I've got the best group of guys. There's 6 employees here and they're awesome. They take the work really seriously. They understand what we're doing. They understand that it's more about the person we're making it for than like being a luthier, There's so much music that's happening with the guitars. There's so much connection that's happening. And that's what I started building guitars for. I don't really see like a next step for Mule. There might be different ways of expressing it in the future, but the size of it and what we're doing is exactly what I wanted to do. And I'm gonna keep doing it the way that I wanna do it. I'm not gonna start doing things differently than the way that I wanna do it, sink or swim. I'm just really thankful to be here, to have people who are showing up and being really interested in the guitars, and to have this team of guys, and people still finding songs in them. The experience of watching someone play an instrument that you've made is a combination of all the feelings that I've had leading up to that moment. It wouldn't be as enjoyable if in that moment I didn't remember how hard it was. The struggle, the failure, the people who helped along the way, the things that I learned, the places that I went. It's really extraordinary, and I think that it's something beautiful that only really instrument makers get to experience. I can't think of anybody else who could make this tool that someone's using to convey this human experience that you're sharing with other humans. It's really extraordinary.
Oh yeah. Yeah.